I've had my YouTube channel for 14 years, and I think this is the first time I've really sat down and talked about the fact that I am Korean American. Like, really, really talked about it, which is kind of crazy because it's like such a huge part of my identity. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Jen. I have done like fashion, beauty, makeup, skincare, life content for a while here. I was born to a couple of Korean immigrants from South Korea. My mom came over first. She was, I think, 26 years old. Her sister had married a GI and moved to Kansas. And so even though my mom and my aunt weren't like super duper tight because there was a little bit of an age gap between them, she decided to pick up from Korea in her 20s and moved to the US not knowing any of the language, not really having any friends over here except for her sister who was like a number of years older than her. And she just started a new life, which when I think about that now, it really, really boggles my brain. Like if I were 26, would I have the kind of bravery to just be like, okay, I'm just going to travel to a new country and start completely from a blank slate and just figure it out? But that's my mom. Thank goodness I feel like to certain extents I did also inherit that kind of innate bravery from her. After a few years of living here, she didn't have any romantic prospects. So my grandma in Korea did a little matchmaking, and my dad and my mom started sending letters to each other with just like film photographs back and forth to each other. They actually met for the first time when my mom flew back to Korea to get married to him, which again boggles my mind. But that is the story of how I came to be. My parents got married in Korea. They came back here after my dad got his green card 3 months later. He flew here. Meanwhile, my mom got pregnant with my sister from the honeymoon. And then 2.5 years later, I was born. 2.5 years later? Yeah. I guess that's true. So I guess me coming from Kansas informs a lot about the person that I am. Kansans are very friendly, they're very straightforward and honest. They also have good intentions, but there is also just like no diversity. So I think that the racism that I grew up with was definitely prevalent, but it was also, for the most part, out of ignorance and not necessarily out of maliciousness. Although there was some of that too, which I'll get to in a little bit, I guess. About 5 years ago, there was this tag that went around on YouTube about questions about being Asian American. So let me sort of get into that, and I'm sure some of these stories will pop up as we go. What ethnicity are you? I am Korean American, born in Kansas, as I said. I feel like growing up, I always got the question, like all the time, where are you from? Where are you from? Sometimes it was said like that. Like I have had perfect English my whole life because I am a native speaker. I was born here. I went to elementary school here. I went to all of my schooling here, and I don't have an accent when I speak English. I never have. But people would say, where are you from? And I would say, Kansas? And they would say, no, I mean, where are you from? Like, where were you born? And I would say, Overland Park, Kansas? The Humana Hospital in Overland Park, Kansas? And they're like, no, I mean, like, where are you from? And I would say, well, my parents are from South Korea. I feel like that was always such an unfair question because I was born here like the person asking me the question, but just based on the way I looked, I was like immediately being othered. You are not one of us. You are from somewhere else, but I wasn't. Like I literally wasn't. And I think that there were parts about that of how people treated me and how I saw people speaking to my parents who did have an accent that made me sort of want to overcompensate in being very good at English, in being very good at communicating what I wanted to say, which maybe that makes it a good thing that like this is my job, is like kind of in a way talking to people. But yeah, I'm Korean American. What generation are you? Because my parents are the ones that immigrated and I was born here, I'm considered second generation. So second generation Korean American. My parents being the ones that immigrated are first generation. And I believe people who immigrated when they were very, very young, like 2, 3, 4, 5, they consider themselves to be like 1.5 generation. But because I was actually born in the US. Second, what is the first experience where you felt that demarcation of being a minority / different? My earliest memories of feeling really different were probably just when I was out and about with my family when I was really young, like maybe 4, 5, 6. In some instances, it was really nice to be able to speak a different language with my family when we were trying to communicate something that we didn't necessarily want other people to understand. Like if we were at the grocery store and we were talking about like money or, you know, just talking to each other about like personal things, we knew we could understand each other, but other people couldn't understand us. But it wasn't necessarily in how other people treated me. And I think that probably happened more when I got to elementary school. By the time I was in first grade, I remember just every day I would cry when I got home because I was bullied like daily by kids just taunting me at recess and telling me my eyes looked like this and you know, making fun of where I was from and calling me a lot of racist names that I won't necessarily repeat because I don't want to get demonetized. But even racist terms where I didn't understand what they meant. Like there's a specific racist term against Korean people. I don't understand how children that young had heard it and known it to call that to me when I was a child. But they did. Starts with a G with a double O. You guys probably know what it is. Anyway, I was called that. I was called Japanese version of that and the Chinese version of that. But yeah, I was just made fun of pretty much all the time for being Asian. So yeah, it was made pretty apparent from a very young age. I also remember as a young child wondering why a lot of toys were blonde-haired and blue-eyed and all of my classmates were blonde-haired and blue-eyed and why I couldn't just look like everyone else. I didn't actually remember this, but it's something my mom just talked to me about within the last year when I was talking to her about these racist experiences from my past. And she said, "Do you remember that time when you were little and you were in the bath, you were scrubbing your skin and I asked you what you were doing and I said I'm trying to rub the tet off of my skin so my skin can be the same color as the other kids in my class." In Korean, we have this thing where you say temiro, which means that you're rubbing the dead skin off of your body. It can come off in rolls. Like if you get like a Korean spa treatment, they'll literally exfoliate your skin and have these rolls of dead skin come off. And I guess, you know, as a child, like I just didn't understand the difference between like the dead skin coming off and like the actual melanin and pigment that was in my skin that made it darker than other people around me. Not other people in general, but like my classmates basically who were Caucasian. Were you always proud of your heritage, or was there a time you rejected it? I would like to say I've always been proud of my heritage. I mean, the way that I was raised was being extremely proud of my heritage, my ethnicity, where I came from. Our family didn't go to Korea all the time. We didn't always have the money to do that kind of international traveling, but we did go about once every 6 years. And I think that that was super formative for me, being able to be around my family in Korea, be a part of that culture, and sort of grow up with those instances. There's this one particular t-shirt. It's probably my favorite t-shirt that I own to this day. And I have family photos from my childhood where my mom is wearing that t-shirt, where my dad's wearing that t-shirt. I'm a child wearing that t-shirt. And like, I still wear that t-shirt today. I should have worn it today. I didn't think about that. But it's my favorite t-shirt. And it is from the 1988 Korean Olympics. Like the Olympics were held in Seoul that year. And it has the tiger with like the little headdress thing. I just always really loved it. I've just always had a lot of pride in being Korean. I think that there were pockets of time where I was like so annoyed about having to wear a hanbok during like certain times of the year. Like, why every single New Year's, why do we have to wear a hanbok again? And then there were also certain times where like there was this theme park in Kansas, or like in Kansas City, that is called Worlds of Fun. Whenever we would go there as kids, the theme park food was so expensive. Instead of buying the food when we got there, my mom would just pack kimbap and like boiled eggs, and then we would bring it to there and eat it. And as a child, I just thought that was like not as yummy as theme park food. You know, there was a part of me that was like a little bit sad that we couldn't just, eat the food there like everybody else was eating. But I don't think it's so much that I wasn't proud of being Korean. It was just like that really deep feeling of knowing that we were very, very, very different than everyone else around us. And sometimes I just wanted to be like everyone else. How has being Asian American affected your relationship with your parents? I feel like there's been a lot of ups and downs when it comes to my relationship with my parents. I think inevitably because of the language barrier and the cultural barrier, I kind of feel like I've had one foot in each world. And sometimes that gives me enough knowledge to be paranoid about doing something wrong because I would be sort of criticized for doing the wrong thing culturally. I guess the way I see it is kind of like a minefield. I know enough and see enough with the cultural differences to be prepared and know that there are a lot of potential mistakes to be made, a lot of cultural offenses on both sides of the cultures, but I don't know enough to not make those mistakes. So it's a very stressful position to be in. Specifically with my parents, I feel like Korean culture and also like most of Asian culture, it's very hierarchical. Parents deeply want to be respected. They want that seniority of being your parents to be honored and respected. And that's an expectation that they have. That's how they treated their parents with respect. They didn't speak back at them. They didn't try to defy them or disagree with them. If they said to do something, they just expect you to do it because they're the parents and you're the child. Whereas American culture, I think, especially nowadays, it has so much more to do with trying to listen and validate and try to have that sense of equal kind of communication. And I think that is really, really difficult when it comes to Koreans, and also very fascinating and difficult and challenging being a parent myself. The choices that I make as a parent is trying to be hyper cognizant of both of those worlds and really trying to let go of some of the ways that I was raised with that I feel like didn't necessarily serve me as an Asian American youth growing up here in the US. Gosh, I feel like that's like not very specific enough, Especially seeing how my husband, who is white, interact with his parents and how he talks with them. There is a very big difference there, like they can mutually use all of the words in their language to explain how they're feeling and what their opinions are on a certain subject. When I talk with my parents, I try my best, but inevitably my main language is English. And so I may use all of the words I have at my disposal in English. They're not going to pick up everything that I'm trying to say to the same nuance. And when my parents speak in Korean to me, I'm not going to understand everything to the same nuance. And if they speak in English to me, they don't have every word at their disposal like I do. So it's complicated. I think a lot of the ways that I actually talk with my parents, we just kind of use Konglish, where we mix Korean and English, like whatever just comes to our tongues come out, and we try our best to communicate in that way. But there's a lot of misses too. There's a lot of times when we'll offend each other because our intent doesn't come across with the words that we use. And that's really difficult. And I think also another hard part is that it's not really deep in Korean culture to apologize. I'm personally a big apologizer. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And in our core family, saying thank you and apologizing and sharing is like a really, really big, important part of our home culture. But that's something that I still kind of have to accept about my parents, is they're not necessarily going to say what I want them to say to me. They're not always going to give me the validation. They're not always going to praise me or apologize for hurt feelings, things like that it just wasn't a part of the culture and language that they grew up with. Inevitably, a lot of times it's me asking for more from them that's kind of difficult for them to give to me, because I'm kind of an open talker like that, and sometimes they're like, you're too much. I will say though, the fact that my parents were both in Kansas for such a long time versus where they live now, which is Southern California, their English is pretty good. Like they're pretty fluent. They can definitely get around independently, and I'm definitely thankful for the fact that their English is way, 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 way better than my Korean. So gotta throw them that bone for sure. Can you speak your language? This is kind of a weirdly worded question because your language, like, what does that mean? Like, for instance, if I happen to be adopted, my language would just be English. I would say that my first languages were English and Korean simultaneously. I can speak Korean. Not as well as a native Korean can speak Korean. If I watch Korean news, I do not understand. I cannot read a Korean newspaper. I can read Korean, but some of the language used in certain contexts, like I can speak common tongue. I can say things colloquially. I cannot give a speech in Korean. I can say like 안녕하세요. 저 이름은 최수경입니다. 저는 미국에 태어난 한국 사람입니다. But like honestly, sometimes I feel very, very self-conscious about my Korean because I always feel like, especially now that I'm like getting older in my age, my whole family's main language is English. I feel like my pronunciation is really not that great. I feel like you can definitely hear my American accent when I speak Korean. I can communicate with Koreans who can't really speak English, but I feel like I constantly have to apologize and just say how bad my Korean is. But I'm willing to try my best. Like even if my Korean is really bad, I still give an attempt with the understanding that my Korean is just not totally fluent. How do you feel about your heritage now and do you identify with it? I love being Korean American. I feel like it's a huge, huge, huge part of my identity, and especially here online, I feel like because of the nature of how I started my YouTube channel and my content online, which was basically making makeup tutorials and content for monolid and like Asian eyelids, I inevitably found my community of Asian Americans for the first time in my life when I did that, because I didn't grow up with people Asian American. I moved out to California about 10-11 years ago now, and before then, like, I just lived in Kansas. I still didn't really have like any Korean friends there or Asian friends there. So the first time I really understood that I wasn't just a subpar Korean American was when I posted that online and found that online community. Ever since that moment, my confidence in being Asian American just grew exponentially. It became so, so important to me. In terms of the cultural side, that's something I've always loved and always wanted to be a part of. I did Hangulakyo when I was a child, so we had like Saturday morning Korean school, and I did like a buchechum, which is like a fan, that traditional Korean fan dance while I was there. I've always loved Korean food. To us growing up, that was just food. And now in my current life, even though Ben, my husband, is not Korean himself, he's the cook in our family and he mainly cooks Korean food. We've just been together for so long and he's eaten Korean food for so long. When he learned how to cook, those were just the things that he learned how to cook. So I feel like Korean American culture in our own family has been a very natural progression and just kind of a huge important part of how we live our daily lives. As for the kids, I kind of go out of my way to share Korean culture with them. I love having them do like photo shoots wearing hanboks or celebrating Korean holidays like Chuseok, which is Thanksgiving, or like New Year's, eating tteokguk, wearing hanboks, playing Korean games. And I even have the kids in a dual language Korean immersion program. So with them being half Korean, I want them to not feel like half of anything. I want them to feel fully Korean and fully American, understand the culture, learn about the language, eat the food, and know that that's a huge part of where they're from. And that's because it's such an important part of who I am. I do try to integrate it into my own daily life and even my fashion. Like this, what I'm wearing right now, is a chogori, which is like the top jacket part of a hanbok. And honestly, I wear this all the time. I usually wear it open and just wear it like casually, like a little blazer thrown on top of my outfits, but I thought it was appropriate for this video. But yeah, I do try to represent things and incorporate my identity into my daily life. Honest to goodness, it makes me feel good about myself. What is your favorite thing about being Asian American / your heritage? There are so many things for me. I think that my favorite thing is partially the food. If I had the question of like, if you could just eat one kind of food for the rest of your life, it would be Korean food. Like I said, to me, that is just food, but I also think it tastes the best and it's generally really healthy, and I love it so much, and I'm so excited that now it's like a part of this like global culture as well. Like people are really into Korean food. I also just really have such a deep appreciation for the attention to detail and artistry that comes from things like Korean beauty, Korean makeup techniques, Korean skincare, Korean fashion. I love the fact that I can make videos for what I was missing out of my childhood and lacking that sense of like mirror image of my own identity, that I could just make that content and then other people could be like, your eyes are like mine, it's the same. For me, that's the coolest feeling in the world, and it makes me so happy to be Asian American. The fact that, you know, we can be this mutual resource for each other, where we can see each other and know that we are worthy, we are beautiful, we are accepted, and that we do have this community even when you feel like you don't have that in your day-to-day life, which was how I felt for like decades. So, oh my gosh, there's so much more I could talk about. I didn't get to. I'm just so thankful for you guys being on this journey with me. I feel like the fact that I got to even do what I do, have this as my job, make this kind of content, it truly is such a redemption for me, because I have had a lot of difficulty and racism throughout my life, and I really always like felt very rejected by other Korean Americans and Asian Americans when I was growing up. So I'm so thankful for the love and like embracing community that I found from just like being here and saying things that are just honest and true to my life and my heart and my experience. So that's what I love the most about being Korean American, is like this. This community, I think, is the coolest thing. When we go through difficulties, we go through it together. That is a huge part of Asian culture, is like being there for each other. I guess that's it. Oh my gosh, I need to make like 10 more videos about being Korean American and talking about what I've experienced in my life in terms of like the difficulties of all of that. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. If you related to this video, please hit thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, or about how to put on makeup for Asian people. Okay, I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!